Um, when you look at what has happened over the last 20, 25 years in terms of language immersion, you see that there is a lot of studies and there is a lot of data collected on the power of foreign languages or a second language. And one of the things that we've discovered is that learning a second language actually strengthens your first language, and vice versa. Learning your home language also strengthens the second language. So we're not really concerned so much about losing one language or substituting one language for another. They complement each other. Spanish and English come from the same family of languages. So as your children learn literacy in Spanish, they're also going to eventually transfer the knowledge of that literacy into English. And the same thing happens for children, for children whose native language is Spanish and going into English, English going into Spanish. There are some wonderful things that happens in the brain when you learn a second language. Practically, when you have to figure things out in a language or in a setting that you're uncomfortable with, you're developing skills. Let's put it in the context of you going to a different country. You going to Russia, so one of the Russian countries now, and you having to figure things out. All of a sudden, you are more aware of those clues and those things that you're normally not aware of. You observe more, you pay more attention, you listen more, you are able to problem solve more because you have to find what to eat and how to get to work or how to get to school, how to communicate basic needs that you have. The same thing happens when you entrust your little one to us in kindergarten or in first grade and say, you know, they have to figure out what we're doing in this other language. They obviously develop those skills in a heightened way to be able to cope with it. The great thing about it is we're not taking them to Russia. We're bringing them to Martin Millennium, and we're bringing them to teachers who are experienced in developing a second language and content. So what the teachers are going to do is build the foundations for them so that they understand the language, and then once they understand that language, they can go up the second step and understand the content and the skills that they have to develop. So as Ms. Swanson said, your children are going to be exposed to the same skills, the same concepts that other children in the traditional program are, except that they're going to be learning it in Spanish initially. Tell me your name, sir? Derek. Derek earlier was asking me, what happens when they get to second grade and third grade, and you know, are they going to fall behind in English? Your children are going to be learning first in Spanish. And so when they come home, they're going to be expressing their experience to you from their lives here at school. And that experience is going to be in Spanish. Don't panic, because there is a transfer segment that usually happens about midway between first grade. The children start to transfer what they've learned in Spanish into English. All of a sudden they start experimenting a little bit in English. They start putting words together in English, and a lot of our children start reading independently in English before we actually do literacy in English, which kicks in about second grade. So you're going to see your children being able to operate in two worlds. They're going to be very confident, you saw that today. They're going to operate in Spanish and be able to explain their world in Spanish, and eventually they're going to turn around and explain it in English. Now, I am from Costa Rica, and I always use this example. It's a personal example, but all of my schooling, elementary and high school, we don't have middle schools in Costa Rica, not yet, and college, all of it was done in Spanish. And I took, but at home, my parents are from a Caribbean background, and so we spoke English at home. And here I am standing with you right now, telling you about everything I need to express, all my ideas, and why you should really consider this program in my second language, in English. So the same gift you have available to you for your children. Don't be scared. Monitor. Don't be nervous. That is too much of a request for you right now as parents, because you will be nervous when children come home and you don't really understand what they're saying. But look at what these children have done today.
islas de Sudamérica, oriental hasta la Barrieta, conocida como la Bola. De estos líderes aprendimos que nosotros somos responsables del cambio que queremos en el mundo, por lo que tenemos que actuar y ayudar a las personas que lo necesitan.
Let me just point out a few things. When children came and they were reading, they knew exactly where to start reading. They didn't read, and it didn't sound monotonous. They had inflection. They had purpose to their reading. They knew where to stop. They knew where a new paragraph was kicking in, and they made emphasis in special words that they have learned. Those are all literacy skills that you learn in any language, and they've learned them in Spanish, and you can hear them when they speak about those words. And they were talking about human rights, and they knew what human rights were. They were talking about two activists for human rights, and they gave you some examples. And so this is exactly what's going to happen when we start doing English language arts with the children come second grade. They're going to transfer all those skills. When we look at the results over time, the children that are in immersion programs outpace the children that are in traditional programs, currently at about 12% in math and 21% in reading. So despite the fact that most of their instruction is in Spanish until second grade, when they get to EOG time in third grade, they've already left their peers behind. And that is just powerful. And that is a gift that you will give to them, and it will open many, many more opportunities for them in the future.